Everyone, I'd like to welcome you all to the 2017 Legendary Captains and Crew Award Ceremony. We're gathered here this evening to recognize the hard work, the talent, and skills of the world's greatest captains and crew members. And just looking around the room, they're here. So I know you guys had a chance to visit out on the porch back there, but there's a lot of stories in this room. On behalf of all of us here at IGFA and the Legendary Captains and Crews committee members, thank you all for coming. Before we get started, I'd like to take a few moments to recognize some people in the room we have here that made this event possible and some special guests. First, I'd like to recognize, I'm very fortunate running a nonprofit to have a great board of directors. We got a couple of our trustees here tonight with us. Dr. Marty Arostegui, where are you, Marty? And a new board member, a friend of mine, Mr. Tim Choate, right up front here. I'd also like to recognize some of the IGFA Hall of Fame members that we have in the audience with us tonight. Again, my friend, Mr. Tim Choate, new inductee. Seated at the same table, Captain Steve Huff. IGFA's past president and a good mentor of mine, Mr. Mike Leach. Captain Alan Merritt. I saw Roy. Is Alan here? Okay. Alan's with our thoughts. And Captain Peter B. Wright. Peter, I did see. There he is. Many of you know one of the most valuable assets that the IGFA has is our talented group of representatives around the world. We have about 311 men and women in 97 countries and territories. The first IGFA representative was appointed in 1941, I believe, in Australia, Mr. Clive Firth. But I think we have some representatives in the audience tonight, so ladies and gentlemen, would you stand up if you're an IGFA representative? Saw a couple of you here. Our newest, Stephanie Choate. Stuart from St. Thomas, good to see you. These events are a lot of work, as many of you know, and I'd like to recognize the staff that made this happen. First of all, Eric Combast, who was just up here. Kim Dubois, Kim's out front. Miss Julia Schaefer, daughter of famous Captain Chip Schaefer. And then Mike Myatt, who couldn't be with us here tonight. We're also, these events could not happen without our sponsors, so I'd like to recognize some of our sponsors tonight. Costa, is Dave Boltice here? Is here? Okay. Okay, Amanda too. Mike Holliday. I saw Mike. Custom Shootout, Captain Skip Smith. Longtime sponsor, Mercury Marine. And Smith Merritt Insurance, Skip and Roy. And then Sportsman's Adventures, Captain Rick Murphy. Rick, I haven't had a chance to say hello tonight. How are you? Finally, the captains and crew members that are selected for this prestigious award are done so by a committee of their peers. We have the entire committee, I believe, on the screen there for everyone to see. You'll recognize many of those names. And I believe quite a few of them are in the audience tonight. If you would, please stand, gentlemen. Bart Barnsey. Bart, I saw you earlier. Honoree Billy Harrison. Charles Perry. Bouncer Smith. There he is. Gary Stu. Peter Wright. And of course, the chairman, Skip Smith. Speaking of Skip, as I said, he's the chairman of this committee, this prestigious committee, and most everybody in this room not only knows Skip, but they know him well. But for those of you that do not, I'll give you a little bit of background on Skip. He began his career in the 1960s, right down the road here on the Fort Lauderdale docks aboard his grandfather's drift boat. Then in the 70s, Skip moved over to the charter docks, never dreaming he would soon travel to over 25 countries as the captain of Jerry and Deborah Dunaway's The Madam and the Hooker. They went on an 11-year quest to break billfish records. Skip went on to run another GNS boat, and by that time he wrapped up his career as a captain, and he managed to amass a total of 49 IGFA world records, most of them being on billfish. He recently refurbished the iconic hooker and is spending more time back on the water, which we're all happy to hear. So many of you all also know Skip as the president of the Custom Shootout. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Captain Skip Smith.
Good evening. Thank you for that, Rob. First of all, I'd like to start out by thanking everybody in the room. Just coming out, a lot of you, of course, have friends that are being recognized, but I saw many of you here tonight that are here just to support the event, and I really want to thank you for coming out, leaving the Miami Boat Show and running away from all that traffic you had to get through to get here. So thank you so much for being here to support this event. What we go through as a committee is extra special to you know, we fight over people that we think deserve this honor, and we want to recognize 20 of them a year. There's so many great people on our list, but when it comes down to the 5 or 6 that get in, Barnsey sums it up best. About a week afterwards, he goes, "You know something? We got it right." And every year we get it right. So with the inductees that we have coming up here tonight, it is awful special for them. It's very special for us as a committee to be able to recognize these people that have led the way in this wonderful sport we all love. So thanking some of the people that came out, you know, Rob mentioned already, Stewart and Jimmy Loveland came in from St. Thomas for the event. Charlie Cluck, Peter Bristow from Madeira, Ken Harris came up from the Keys, Rufus came down from up north, Randy, Nick Smith, Tom Green, so many people I saw out there. You know, thank you guys for coming out and supporting the event. Thank you. Tonight we're going to be honoring the 2017 class of the legendary captain and crew by presenting the Tommy Gifford Award to the inductees. This award, we came up with a name trying to think of who would represent it. There's Hemingway Awards, there's so many awards out there, but when we looked at who this award should be named after, you know, it was an easy pick to come up with someone that really was innovative and was a real hell of a good fisherman. So Tommy Gifford is considered one of the most innovative blue water anglers who ever lived. Just an angler, he's a captain too, and a mate. He's one of the greatest charter skippers to guide anglers to major game fishes of the sea. He began chartering down here in Miami in 1920. Gifford was the first one to use spreader outriggers on the East Coast and first to catch Atlantic blue marlin with the new devices. Over the course of his 50-year career, he developed an encyclopedic knowledge of game fish and techniques to catch them. And he served as a guide and consultant to some of the most famous names in saltwater angling back then, including Van Kempen Hellner, Charles Lehman, Michael Lerner, and Ernest Hemingway. He never lost his zest for the sea, sort of like these guys we're honoring tonight, or his awe of the creatures beneath the waves. Raymond Camp wrote, big game angling has a brief history, but Tommy Gifford's name is sharply etched on every page. Sort of like these guys we're going to honor tonight. They've etched their pages too. In the room this evening, we have the past recipients of this prestigious award, and I think they've been recognized already. When I look at the list that's on your table there of all the past ones, like I said, every time we know what got it right. You look at those names, and if you follow the history of this great sport, you know, these names have been behind the top anglers of this day. I read off the ones that Tommy Gifford fished, but you look at the people that Jackie and Morrow fished, and Ralph Dell fished, and Billy Harrison fished, and these guys, and what Kurt Whitaker's done is incredible. And you know, they've served as the ambassador of the sport, not only for the sport itself, but for the IGFA. They're the ones that fished by the rules and set the standards for, you know, what was to be done in this sport, you know. And some of the things we've lost today, you know, the way we fish today, you know, I know that the Ken Harris is here, his family, I mean, the Delft family and the way Ken fishes, they've always fished by the IGFA rules, and we've kind of lost that, and like to get back to those days where we fished according to those rules, but these guys, they fish that way and were a very big part of the IGFA. Back to reading here. The primary criteria for receiving the Tommy Gifford Award from the IGFA is that the captain and crew member must have provided leadership in their trade and earned the respect of their peers, thus making a meaningful contribution to the sport of recreational angling over an extended period of time. The nominee must demonstrate that he or she has espoused the ethical angling standards stated by the founders of the IGFA. Kind of relates back to the big long thing I just said about these guys. To quote Mark Sosin, though, this is a great quote. "There is no greater honor than to be recognized by your peers. You cannot buy it, you have to earn it." And these guys have done that. If anybody ever wants to nominate, we need nominations, but we need a bio with it. If anybody wants to nominate somebody, please contact Julia Schaefer at the IGFA and load her email box up because we need more nominees. We have plenty on there, but we just always feel like we're missing so many. So if anybody knows of somebody you think deserve it, we don't care if they're 30 or 106. Send them in, please. In honor of the most senior member of this year's legendary class, we're going to present the awards tonight in reverse of alphabetical order. Kurt Whitaker turned 106 years old this past Monday. Happy birthday, Kurt. And with a name like Whitaker, he's been at the end of the roll call his whole life, one long life. So this will be a nice change for him tonight. The first member tonight of the 2017 class is Kurt Whitaker. Let's roll the tape and learn a little bit more about Kurt.
At 106, Kurt Whitaker ranks as the dean of custom boat building. He was born in New Jersey, where his father, Captain Ad, worked as a charter boat fisherman in the summer and an oysterman in the winter. Tired of his winter job and the freezing cold, Captain Ad moved his family to Stuart, Florida, when Kurt was 6. He and his 2 brothers grew up spending their summers on the Delaware Bay and winters on the St. Lucie River. In 1921, Kurt pooled his profits from delivering newspapers and painting names on boat hulls to build a 14-foot skiff of his own design. It would be his first of many, as he went on to become the founder of Whitaker Boat Works. By 1931, he had designed and built 6 boats on his own. At the age of 23, he designed and built a 33-foot single-screw boat called the Shearwater. This fishing boat, designed based on local inlet problems and demanding fishing needs, is the backbone to the design of the modern Whitaker sport fishermen of today. Kurt would go on to build boats for his father and brothers, which the 4 of them captained as the popular Whitaker fleet of charter boats in Stuart, Florida. Kurt and his family were heavily involved in the founding of the Stuart Sailfish Club. In the late 1940s, many sailfish were being brought to the docks instead of being released. It was Kurt who suggested and later designed an impressive button that would be given by the club to those who released their fish. Although he retired from boat building full-time in 1986, Whitaker Boat Works stays in the family with Kurt's nephew, Jim Dragseth, and his son, John, serving as president and vice president, respectively. Since his retirement, Kurt has focused on his love of painting and has completed over 1,800 canvases to date. The IGFA is proud to present Captain Kurt Whitaker with the Tommy Gifford Award.
Hold on, it's going to be a couple minutes. We're going to tell a few stories first. That's the professional story. Now we're going to get the real stories. To tell you a little bit more about Kurt, please welcome Captain Peter B. Wright to the stage. He's going to tell us a little bit more that we don't know.
Well, I'm afraid I can't add a whole lot because I am incredibly impressed by this man. I've done some research. I was helped by
What's that? Jan?
Jan Fote. And I've got pages and pages and pages of stuff here, but I had kind of whittled it down because I didn't want to take up all your time. And whoever put this together has done an exceptional job. But I would like to say that I personally, even though I am very proud to be in the legendary Captains and Crew, and Tommy Gifford, by the way, was one of my heroes. I think that this man right here is a capable, unbelievable human being that is more deserving of it than just about all the rest of us that are already in it. I am very proud to be considered in the same class as Kurt.
Pete, what about these 14 pages? I guess we'll have to get in the Marlin magazine and let them write up a real write-up here, and we'll get them these accomplishments seen in print somehow or another, but it is quite amazing. Well, if I turn the page, it says, to accept the Tommy Gifford Award, please welcome Kurt Whitaker to the stage, along with John Whitaker. I think you were coming up with him. And I guess we're going to meet over here to my right, please. With President Rob Kramer. Oh my gosh. He's leaving the wheelchair. Kurt, you're awesome. I guess if you work out every day and you're at that gym every day, man, you can do anything. Amazing. He's coming on the stage. Right over here. Chase that blonde, will you? Right here is fine, Kurt. Right here is fine. Right here is fine. John, you got a few words you can say there?
Yeah, I'm going to talk after Dad.
We'll get a couple photos here, and then you can page through that. Come on, John, get in the back. Come on, John. Okay. He's getting his notes.
All right. Awesome. Amazing. Okay. Thank you.
All the iPhones. Hold on, you've got iPhone photographer behind you here.
Oh, wait.
Hold on, Jimmy. We're getting the trophy. You guys got it? You let John talk here?
Kurt's going to talk.
Kurt's going to talk. All right, let's go.
Okay.
I'll put this right here, John.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
I don't have a cordless mic. You got to come right over here.
Dad, you got to come over here. Oh, yeah. Here's some notes if you want to use them. Just some, you can go down here and.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I'm pleased to be here to accept this award, and also I want to share it with my parents who were in the charter boat business before me, and all my brothers were in the same business. So we do go back quite a ways. And Eric Stewart, my dad started handline fishing when he came down in 1917. And he caught a lot of fish. And he had people come up from the hotels that wanted to go fishing with him. And he wouldn't take them because he said the boat wasn't adequate for it, and he didn't need anybody else. So this went on for about 4 or 5 years. And then the price of fish, they started net fishing in the Stewart, or off of Stewart, and bringing in these big catches. And they flooded the market. So Dad took one gentleman out that had been pestering him for years, and he loved it. And he wanted to sponsor my dad to have a bigger boat built, that where he'd come down in the winter and he could go fishing with him, and when he wasn't fishing, when he wasn't down, Dad could use the boat. So that's how we got started in the sport fishing business. And at first, the boats were pretty simple. They were mostly old boats that were picked up by, including mostly stock boats that were maybe halfway worn out. And we would put in a couple of chairs and put maybe just regular chairs and put gimbals in the chairs. And then we'd put in, just have a place where we were sticking some poles for outriggers. And that was the start of that. Of course, over the period, why, there's been so many changes that I can't mention them all. But we sort of went along with them, and I was dissatisfied with the performance of the boat I had that I got, and so I began to study marine architecture, and I kept my eye on all the features of the boats that were all the bad features, and sort of noted all the good features. And I designed my first boat, and back in 1933, and started fishing it. And it proved out to be a pretty good boat. And both my brothers and father, my two brothers, and they wanted boats also. So that's how I got into boat building business. So it goes a long ways.
Would you like to sit down for a minute? Want to grab a chair? Or are you
We're going to go down this way if you're ready to go down.
Okay. No, I'll go sit in my chair.
Okay. You need some help, or you got it?
Okay. Stand by just in case.
Okay. All right. Well, I think most of you know I'm John, and I'm Kurt's son, and my sister Joanne came across this article from Ernest Lyons from 1945. And Ernie Lyons later on became the editor of the Stuart News in Stuart, Florida, and became a fairly famous person. He actually had one of our bridges named after him. But it's such a good story. I'm going to read it to you. I tried to condense it, but it was really hard to do that. So I'll see if I can get on with it anyway. But early Labor Day morning, this is Ernie Lyons talking, I went out commercial fishing with Curtis Whitaker on the Howdy, a small charter craft which used to belong to DeWitt Applegrove in West Palm Beach. The trip started out rare human element consideration for the other fellow. As we eased down a narrow channel past a moored houseboat, Captain Curtis slowed her down to a crawl. Has it shoaled up here, I asked. No, he replied. I'm just keeping our wake from rocking that houseboat. He goes, you can put that down in my book as one of the top reasons why Curtis Whitaker is one of the ace charter captains in the Martin County fleet. Okay, easing out of the inlet in gray dawn, we saw ugly rain squalls north and south, but we edged between them to the northeast and soon had 4 stout handlines trailing with 2 3.5 drones, an outrigger, and a couple of feathers astern. Before I had time to get my gloves on, those handlines went into action, and soon there were 3 big king mackerel, 4 blue runners, a jack, small Spanish mackerel, and about a 15-pound barracuda thrashing around in the fish box. Although the clouds grew more menacing, we continued our course, and about 6 miles offshore, Curtis I don't even know this word, unerringly located a small red buoy which he had placed to mark a hidden reef. Here it is, he said. I'll get the grouper lines ready while you stow the trolling gear. He idled the howdy down. A small dolphin struck as I brought in the stern line. While I was still threshing in the box, the outriggers bowed and Curtis said, "Get your gloves on for this fellow." I really needed him then. What a fish. If you believe it, try hauling in a 30-pound amberjack, man to man. While I'm still breathing hard from this exertion, he said, "Hey, here's another one." And I'm now thoroughly convinced that the only thing harder to haul in than a 30-pound amberjack was a 35-pounder, which was the next on our bill of fare. Over went the grouper lines, baited with chunks of blue runner. I find, said Captain Curtis delicately, that the novice sometimes has difficulty in this deep water reef fishing. He fails to pull fast and hard enough to take the belly out of the line and set the hook. Curtis hauled in 4 big grouper, a beautiful 13-pound red snapper, while all I did was feed him bait with my feeble jerks and the hand line. The sea got to be kicking up more and more, so we called it a day and started in. Myself, I'll be honest about it, I'd have been at the helm, I wouldn't have known which way to go. 6 miles offshore in a rain squall, I would probably headed for the Bahamas. Once we saw a great hammerhead shark trolling alongside just ahead of us, our bow, and it rained. A 10-pound king mackerel wrangled onto an outrigger, and I insisted on dangling him over the side for 2 or 3 times until Captain Kirk kindly took him away from me. Without a sight of land, Kurt unerringly discovered the inlet's mouth. Going in over the bar, an 8-pound cobia latched onto a drone, and he was still kicking when he got inside the river. I had a wonderful time, just the memory hauling in that last 35-pound amberjack was something. Of course, Captain Whitaker, all alone at one time, using an ordinary hand line, brought to the boat side the reef bottom and landed a jewfish which weighed 265 pounds. Dressed with head and tail cut off, he modestly about it, not with a rope or shark. Let me start over. He modestly about it, not with a rope or shark hook, but with an ordinary tarred hand line. I'm about done. No. Okay. Okay. What is this?
Ordinary tarred.
Tarred, yeah, an ordinary tarred hand line. He caught this 265-pound Goliath grouper, to be politically correct today. Okay, back at Salerno, we unloaded our edible catch at Banks Shelton's Fish House and the Barracuda and Amberjack at the Shark House, and we were soon under cover again in the Whitaker Boathouse in Port Sewell. I hope sometime to have the pleasure of going fishing again with Kurt and know that I will always enjoy myself just as thoroughly as I did Monday on that trim little seaboat, the Howdy. That's the end of the story. All right, and Ernest Lyons is no longer with us, but he went on to be a great conservationist and a big environmentalist with the river and all the problems we have in Martin County with the runoff and all that kind of stuff. So he's a great guy. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Congratulations. I want to fish with Kurt, too. Sign me up. That thing was written in 1945. I was reading on the bottom. It's absolutely amazing. Pete, you want the last word? Go ahead.
Not the last word, but I was expecting this to show up already because so much of the stuff that I was going to tell you has already been produced. Today, we are extremely conservation-minded. This man was at the very front of the pack. He, with one of his customers, tagged and released the first sailfish that was ever recaptured and a tag turned back in. That alone is a magnificent thing. But he also, with the Stewart Sailfish Club, started what they called the Light Tackle Tournament. he happened to win the damn thing about the first time they ever had one. And it was a release, totally release. So I want to emphasize, you know, this guy is amazing. He's a conservationist. He's a meat fisherman. He is just everything. And his longevity is mind-boggling. He's a hell of a guy.
Well, Pete said he should have been in before any of us, and you're right, but the rest of these guys should have been in years and years ago too, and received this award from us, our committee. Our next honoree tonight is Captain Jack Morrow. Let's see the video and learn a little bit more about world famous Captain Jack. We're just going to watch the video, Jack, then we're going to pick on you, and then we'll get to you.
Jack Morrow and his family moved to West Palm Beach, Florida in 1948 from Red Bank, New Jersey. From a young age, Jack was immediately drawn to the docks and started cleaning boats for small change. At the time, he never imagined that his passion for the sea and sport fishing would evolve into a well-respected, successful career spanning over 60 years and taking him all over the world, including Australia, Venezuela, Panama, Mexico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, and the entire east coast of the U.S. Jack's first job as a captain was on the Valiant Lady in 1963. His knowledge, skill, hard work, and dedication led to numerous first, second, and third place tournament wins. He was also the first captain to win the International Masters Angling Tournament twice, in 1980 and 1982. Some personal highlights of his career include one-day catches of 54 sailfish on No Problem and 29 sailfish on Sail Ahoy in the waters off Palm Beach, Florida. Other memorable fishing days included 823-pound blue marlin, a 1,025-pound bluefin tuna, and 7 giant tuna caught in one day with IGFA Hall of Fame member Johnny Morris on the Pretty Patty. Jack has led his clients to a number of world records over the years and fondly remembers a day aboard the One Bull when they caught 9 blue marlin in St. Thomas, a record that was held for over 15 years. Jack firmly believes in sharing his fishing knowledge with others as his way of paying it forward in appreciation to all his peers and friends who gave him the opportunities to pursue his dream. He's never forgotten where he started on the docks of Palm Beach or the many boat builders, owners, and legendary fishermen who helped mentor him along the way. Jack currently works as the captain of the Boys R Us for Greg Garvey, alongside his son Kevin, who serves as both his mate and stand-in captain. The IGFA is proud to present Captain Jack Morrow with the Tommy Gifford Award.
Hold on, you can give them an ovation now, but let's wait a second because we got 2 guys that want to tell some really bad stories about Captain Jack. To tell you more about Captain Jack, let's welcome 2 really good storytellers, Captain Gary Stuve and Captain Bart Barnsey, to tell a couple of quick stories here. Gary, Bart, you can relax over there if you want for a few more minutes. Gary's probably going to be like 46 minutes or something, yeah. Sorry, Gary.
There ain't a whole lot I can add after that. Jack and I started out, I think, I was a little bit behind him on the docks at Sailfish Marina and Palm Beach Shores in the mid-50s. We were dock rats, hanging around the docks all the time, washing boats, hoping a mate wouldn't show up so we could maybe get the call. And I was always paying, Jack was always a little bit ahead of me. You know, he got to work on a Rybovich or wash a Rybovich down before I did. And that, in those days, that was your goal, to work on one of those boats. I was, you know, I didn't ask a lot of questions, but I did a lot of observing, and I was always watching what Jack was doing. And like I said, I was playing catch-up, and when you're playing catch-up to Jack Morrow, you're playing catch-up for a long time. I mean, him and I spent a summer together alongside each other in the Montauk Deep Sea Club, and he was on a Rybovich, I was on a Rybovich. Jimmy Loveland was just down the dock on the Nika, and Richard Merritt was there, and we all kind of hung out, and we were kind of like a family. I got to know Jack probably better that summer than I had up until then, because we were just stuck together. And, you know, I was paying attention. I remember when he caught the 9 down in St. Thomas, and I was just, oh, I wish I could have been there to do that. And a funny thing, we both were starting our families about the same time. And in the mid-60s, we had a kid or something, and Jackie was buying a house. And he was trying to give me some advice, and he was saying, you know, now's a good time to buy a house. The interest rates are real low. And I'm saying, I was like, interest rate? What the hell is he talking about, interest rates? You know, I was clueless. I didn't know what the heck he was talking about. I wish I did then, but it took me a little while to catch on, Jack. But anyway, I was in Cat Key when he won the Cat Key tuna tournament with an angler that never placed before. He had a good boat. He had a Merritt boat then. And I was in St. Thomas when they hung up that 823 or whatever it was. I was across the dock with Bubba Carter, and I was there for that. And I was always hanging around. I remember when he was catching those granders up in Gloucester. And before Jack became a captain, he was one hell of a good mate. As a matter of fact, I don't think there was a better one, because you'd look from boat to boat, and you'd see, you know, we were too proud to ask what you were doing. We'd kind of sneak a peek and see what he's doing. And back then, you know, the thing was who could get the baits out fastest and keep them out and change baits and stuff. And he was the guy that could throw we were using 20 feet of number 8 leader wire, all coiled up. There wasn't no wind on leaders or anything. And Jack had a way that he could uncoil it and hold it with his thumbs and flip it out there and never get it tangled up. And that saved precious seconds. And that's what we were in the, you know, sort of just see who could outdo the other and who could do it faster. And like I said, he became a captain a few years before I did. I'll never forget the first time, maybe not the first time, but we were talking. He was working on a Rybovich that was a private boat. He said, yeah, when you get in with that boat, he says, you not only chamois off the whole boat, then you get down on your hands and knees and you chamois off the decks on that boat, the cabin top and the forward deck, everything gets chamoised off. And I'm just glad that Jack is officially recognized. He's always been unofficially recognized to be in this club, but I'm glad he's getting a recognition tonight because he deserves it. He's paid his dues, and I can't think of, I couldn't be any prouder. Congratulations, Jack.
Captain Bart Barnsey.
I wish Gipp would have mentioned this a little earlier, that I was supposed to do this. Everything Gary said is 100% true. Jack is an incredible guy. He's an incredible fisherman. They grew up together in Palm Beach. I'm a Pompano guy. I'm a drift boat kid. And we weren't allowed to hang out with the Palm Beach guys much in my youth. I didn't know what a chamois was until about 10 years ago. But, well, I have to tell you, Gary made a real strong point. Through the years, when I finally got to fish on sport fishing boats and traveled around a little bit, in fact, in that beautiful picture of those 9 blue marlin, I was standing next to Jack. It was one of the greatest days of my fishing career. We had a great time. I kept the beer cold, but it was good. It was fun. But through the years, the Khaki tuna tournament that he mentioned that Jack won, he beat me out the last day. We're still friends. But he's an amazing guy. He's a great captain. He's a great guy. He's a real credit to this profession, and I'm real proud to be here talking about him tonight. Thanks.
That's what makes this event so fun. You just don't know. Well, to accept the Tommy Gifford Award, please welcome Captain Jack Morrow. Turn around, get a picture first. trophy, will you? Check out the blonde, the brunettes, the redheads.
Awesome. Right here, everybody. Thank you.
Hold on, there's a beautiful brunette coming, Jack.
The boss man's daughter.
Smile real big on that one.
Jimmy's beautiful too.
It's all yours, Jack.
I got to tell you, both of them boys said about, just said about all of it for me. Oh, it's been a great life and a lot of fishing, a lot of days on the water. Old charter boatman, chartered most of my whole life, and but to be chosen for this award is truly an honor. I would like to thank the IGFA for hosting this ceremony and thank you, the committee, for who worked so hard at putting it all together for the Tommy Gifford Captain's Award. And also for special thanks to Skip Smith for originating the coming up with the idea of the forming of the legendary Tommy Gifford Awards as well. Skip, good man. I did know Tommy Gifford briefly. I met him in Montauk in 1960. He was up there on the little boat, the Stormy Petrel. He'd be sitting on the back of on the dock behind his boat. He'd be telling stories. And I remember overhearing some of them to some of the other Miami boatmen were up there at the time, and guys like Chuck and Clarence Fine and Harold Abbott and Skeeter Burton, some of the guys like that from Miami. And I was able to talk to Tommy a couple times myself and met his wife Esther as well. She was a great lady. And later on in the years, Johnny Harms got Tommy to come to St. Thomas, and that's where he went down to, and that's where he stayed until he died. He was down there. I think Tommy died in 1967, and Esther stayed there for a while. She was cooking at the Lord Rumbottom's in Johnny Harms' restaurant, and she remembered me. And every time I go in there, they had time, and she wasn't busy, I would talk to her a little bit. It was nice, and she left there, and not sure exactly where she went because she's long gone, been a long time ago. But those blue marlin, there's 9 blue marlin we caught one day with Ralph Gilster and Barky Garney. That was a great day. It seemed like it wasn't that long ago, but it was 74, I think, wasn't it, Barky? God, a long time ago. Barky came down with Jimmy Unrath and Ralph Gilster and Catherine Gilster. What a trip! It was a great day. We caught 8 blue marlin, and Ralph said, "Call in, tell them to get set up for a party. We're gonna have a party here tonight." While I was on the phone with June Black, Jerry Black's wife, I gotta go. I got to fish up, and there happened to be a double header, and we slipped number 9 in the boat just to show forth that for what we caught for the day. Ran back up on the bridge and coming back on number 10. And we got number 10 pretty close to the boat. We got dug up and pulled a hook. We would have had 10. That was an awesome day. Wasn't Barky? It was great. And I remember one fish we had on, I don't know, it was number 5 or 6 or something like that, and he was leading up on the starboard side. He made a U-turn and turned around and jumped all the way across the stern of the boat, all the way up the side of them on the port side. I mean, like all the way around, out of water, all the way. And Catherine's up on the bridge with me. She says, "Look at that mother effer go." Everybody, I fell to my knees on the bridge and laughter. It was so funny. It was really something else. Back in the days when charter fishing, I fished with Frank Ardy in the Sail Ahoy. What a charter boat. Frank had a hell of a good business. He was a hard guy to work for. I was the highest paid mate on the East Coast. I think we're getting $35 a half a day and $70 all day for a charter. And I mean, I remember days I got a $1 tip, you know. It was great, you know. And one day we caught 29 sailfish one day. It was fishing the sailfish derby. Sailfish Derby back those years was like 3 weeks. And that day we caught the 29, Rose Hamp, great lady, fished her a lot with Frank. She used to fish half the Derby with Frank each year for several years. She won the Derby that one day, but she caught 19 out of 29. She won the whole Derby in one day. It was great. Yeah, one day we had 54 sailfish off the Palm Beach on the No Problem. That boat, I love that boat. That boat, I wish I had that boat more years over there in Kaki. We did well. We come in first one year in the tuna tournament. We come second another year. And wish I had some more years to go. We done pretty well, and it was great. Johnny Morris. Johnny loved his giant tuna fishing. I do too. That's my favorite. We were happened to be in Point Judith. Had Johnny fly into Newport. First day out, we caught 2. Next day, we caught 1. Had him in the early in the morning. Had him in the cockpit, and I fished with Cookie Murray. Me and Cookie and another couple of boats fished together up there as a team. And we were talking back and forth on the radio when we found out up at the Cape off Chatham they were biting pretty good, and they were seeing them good. Cookie said, "You want to go?" I said, "Let's go." I said, "Let me go down and tell Johnny." I come down out of the tower. "Johnny, I need to talk to you a minute." He said, "Yeah, Jack. I'm thinking about making a move." He says, "What?" "What?" I said, "Yeah, what's the deal?" He said, "Well, I'm thinking about going off Chatham." I said, "The Rose and Marie has been been seeing them and busting and tearing them up and what have you." So he said, "You're the boss." So we took off that. He said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to go in there and get rid of the fish and get bait, get fuel, pay my bill, and get out of here and go up to the Cape." We went to Hyannis. I'll make a long story short, we went off the next day. Me and Cookie left about the same time. He got out there, it was foggy, in the dark. That's where some of this gray hair come from, you know? In the dark and the fog. And I got out there, just before getting a Cookie, he had one on. And I see him busting, crashing. I mean, good fish too, nice fish. I couldn't wait to get him out. And we got one spreader out, we got another spreader out, get the third one out, put the fourth one out, bam, there it comes down, the third one, got him on. And got all the rigs back in and started coming back on. We pulled a hook. I said, "Oh my God, hope this ain't going to be the way the day's going to be," you know. But make a long story short, that day we caught 7 giants. Cookie caught 7. And those fish are nice fish. They're 6 to 8, 6 to 7, nice size fish. That was a great day. Johnny said, I thought he died and went to heaven. He just loved it. He sit up in that chair down hard and says, "Jackie, I love it, you know. It was great. I caught my first blue marlin with Jerry Black on the boat called the Jolly Roger, back in Walker's. I was 15 years old. I'm going back a little bit, behind myself a little bit. But anyway, that was 174 pounds, I don't believe it. The old Walker's Key. I mean, it wasn't a whole lot there. Docks are falling down. Seawater wasn't much. The breakwater. If it blew, we had to go down to Grand Key and lay inside of Grand Key. Could lay at the dock. Pylons wouldn't hold you anyway, you know. So that was something else. But anyway, we caught a nice 1,000-pounder for my boss on the Pretty Patty, George Barker. He was a great guy. He used to charter me for years and years and years. He used to charter me probably 30, 35 days a year. You know, here, there, different places. Been fishing, and we caught just 1,025, and he was a tough one. Not because of his size, I was just way hooked to something. And off the Chatham, off that way, the water's off that coast here, the water a little deeper. They get down there, and we see where that fish got down and trying to get in the rocks and kind of trying to get the hook out, you know, trying to go down like that and try to get that hook out of his mouth or something like that. But we had him on for probably about an hour and 20 minutes or so, but and a good rod. He was stump pullers, man, 130-pound unlimited stump puller, nice one. And that thing was like that. But 1,025, you don't catch many 1,000-pounders up in the Cape area too much, but that really was quite a feat. And we had one trip down to that trip we caught that 823-pounder blue marlin. That was for Chick Bashir's. In fact, Chick Bashir's, as a matter of fact, on the Wendy too, was one of those pictures we had up there. He caught his first giant tooth he ever caught before in his life. He caught 2 that day on the Wendy too, the horseman. And it was his first wife, Becky, I think her name was, or something like that. Carey, remember her? But anyway.
Watch what you're asking.
Anyway, that was great. But we had them, everywhere I had them, and had them in Cozumel, we had strings of sailfish, I mean, and slams, and I mean, you name it. I mean, he was just such a lucky guy to have on a boat, and we just caught the crap out of fish, and he was really something else. And we caught 25 blue marlin in 5 days. Did the same thing with Skip Smith on the hooker in Venezuela. We chartered Skip for 5 days with me and George Markham. We caught 25 blue marlin in 5 days. Smaller fish, little fish though, but 20 and 30 pound test. Remember that one fish we caught that had a double bill? Huh?
Yeah.
Had 2 bills.
Yep.
I got a picture of that, just a glimpse of it on a video.
Jackie goes, if we catch another one, can we get more pictures of it next time?
Oh man! But anyway, that was a great trip. And the 823 pounder, we knew he was a nice fish. And my mate Teddy told me he was a great guy. We worked together really, very nice, very well. And he said, "Jack, it's a grand. It's a grand." I said, "No, Teddy ain't a grand." He had the wire on him, and he was a nice fish, so. But and boy, he was hard to wire too. He was one of those fish that would put his head down like this. I mean, his tail was up here like this. You know, I mean, just digging. Boy, got another. He had to dump him. I said, "You got to dump him to me." I always told him a good wireman, a good wireman knows when to let go. It's not being strong; it's being smart. So he had to dump it 3 times. Finally, the fish turned a little bit to where he got up a little bit, where we could turn, where we could get a couple more pulls, got a gaff in him. Because the reason why I put a gaff in him is because Chick said, "He's a nice one, Jack, isn't he?" I said, "Yes, he is. He's a nice one." He said, "I'll tell you what I'll do." He says, "I'll mount him, the bill and tail for all of you." I said, "Put him in the boat." I said, "You can take me off the charter boat, but you can't take the charter boat out of me." You know? Chink, chink. You know, mounts, you know. But I dropped the commission because he mounted our fish, you know, a bill and a tail for each one of us. I had Tommy Ross was the one made, Teddy Tardonian and myself, and what a crew. You know, it was a lot of fun. I fished a real good friend of mine I worked for a long time, a boat called One Bull, Herbie Skinner. He was a great guy. He just passed away here about a year or so ago, and his wife not too long after that. And we won, didn't win. Second place in the Hatters Blue Marlin tournament. And the next day, everybody's partying, having a good old time. And I was walking down the dock, down toward the boat, and I see all this commotion. And what's going on down there? I look down there, Herbie's in the water, and he's thrashing, his water's flying, and I mean, it's like everything's foamy, you know. And Herbie couldn't swim a lick. He couldn't swim a stroke. I said, "Herbie, stand up, Herbie." It's hard, and he's hard of hearing too, but all that water he finally heard me, and he stood up, and he was in the water about like this. His first thing he said is, "Oh, shit." That was something else, but I got time for a little Nolan?
Yep. It's your night, man. Fish stories are great.
I had Johnny Ryovich down at St. Thomas and Bob Fisher one trip on the One Bull, that 47-foot Ryovich. And they came down the dock, and one morning, the first morning, Johnny comes walking down the dock with a pair of rods. He looked like the buggy whips, you know, from California, the California guys got, and a couple narrow Ocean City narrow spool with 50-pound dacron on it. I said to Johnny, I says, what are we doing with these things? He says, "We're going to fish them." I said, "Do we have to?" The day didn't go very well after that. But it did. Let me tell you the story. This is funny. The first fish we had on, he'd run out there and jump. Them 892s, I mean, I about wore them out, man. I tell you what, we were hot on them, boy. And that fish came up the side of the boat, and he turned and he started charging the boat, and I'm kind of trying to spin around as fast as I could with those 892s as fast as they would go in a hard turn, and that boom on hit the side of that boat with the hull, and I swear to God, that bill went up inside the boat. I get a picture of it. That bill must be that far up inside the boat. That's how hard he hit it. Bam! Huh?
Oh, the wood boat.
A wood boat, yeah. But this one. This is good. Caught another fish that day. We went in after that one. Had this fish on. He's out there doing the 892s are doing their thing, man. They're smoking. I mean, we're trying to get, both of these fish were on his tackle too, which I'd never dreamed of, but that's how it went. Make a long story short, I don't like their back too much, so I turn on them. And I told him, I said, hold that halyard line back on the starboard side so I can run this fish. I'm gonna run down the side. Mr. Fisher goes over there, he's kind of a little shaky anyway, So he went over there. And I wanted him to hold it back. He uncleated it from the cleat, and all of a sudden, out it went. I pictured in mind, right there, I see the halyard line out there doing this, with the big old belly in there. That fish cradled in that halyard line. I pictured it. It happened. It happened. But believe it or not, it happened. We had him after a while. He came up that side of the boat on the starboard side. He jumped, and he cradled right in that halyard line. Mrs. Fisher took a picture of that, and she's got it with that fish belly right in that halyard line, right in the belly. You don't believe it. Tore my rigger off. Tore right off. I says, all right, Rob, we're going to dock. We're going in there and fix your rigger. And we did. Johnny got up. We had Johnny and Kay and Bob Fisher and his wife. He went up there, brought them back home. We come back down and we fixed that rigger. And it was that area in that rigger where it was a sleeve. We cut it, hacksawed off, put it together, with the turnbuckles and cables and tighten it all up and all that. And that was the extent of the John Robbins trip. The next day we went down to the Bass and cruised around down there with the folks. But that was funny. It wasn't funny at the time, but I could tell you about it now. It's funny, but I got to tell you, not a lot of fishing, but a lot of places. But it's not me. It's not I did this and I did that. It's we. I had a lot of good mates. Without a good mate, you don't have nothing. It's teamwork. It's team effort. And I've had a lot of mates, and I'm gonna name a bunch of them from the get-go. I guess it won't take long. First mate I ever had, first boat I ever ran, was a boy by the name of Jerry Soltisic, Billy Oswald, Emmett Coble, John Frawley, Jimmy Hardy, Timmy Sperling. I think he's got gills. He was a great mate. He and me on that no problem. I mean, every turn we fished, we won our place. I swear to God. And I wish I had that thing more tuna fishing. A great boat for me. The late Wendy Wagner, Gary Warner, Tommy Sartori, Bobby Ivan, the late Tommy Sartori, late Bobby Ivan, Mark Shunk, Ted Tordogna. He and Teddy worked together just great. I mean, he was wonderful. Late Skip Mufford. Skip was a good man. Tom Morrow and Kevin Morrow. I got to tell you, it's not because they're my boys, but I showed them a lot. They learned a lot. And Tommy worked for me for 8 or 9 years, I guess it was. And then he got off on his own. He took one of my old jobs over and ran it, did a Juro with Garofalo, and ran the estate and did a wonderful job for him. And great mate, great captain. And Kevin Morrow, he's with me, and he had some good jobs. He worked for Dale Earnhardt and Senior, and he worked for Alan Jackson. He always wanted to work for me. There he is. He turned Alan down to come with me. Kevin's great family. Both Tom and Aaron, both Tom and Kevin's got great families, great kids, and love them to death. And they learn a lot from me, but yet, they learn a lot on their own. I mean, as days goes on, every year goes on, you learn something new every day. I always say, I wish I could learn something new every day because things change. And you got to keep up with the changes, and it does, I'm proud of both of them. And right now I'm presently on the boat called the Boys Russ, and a great boat to Viking. I work for a wonderful family, Greg and Kathleen Garvey. They're sitting right over here with their children, Jessica, Grant, Gregory, and Griffin. Great family, great boys, love them to death. And like I say, your mates and people with you on the boat, it's a team effort, and without them, I wouldn't be doing what I did, you know. And I've got another mate, my best friend in the world. It's my wife, Kathy. All the early years, I used to travel. I was never home. She raised those kids almost by herself, 5 of them, 4 boys and a girl. And to put up with me, all that traveling and such, you know, I mean, she's done a great job. I love you, Kathy. Okay.
In case you forget your name.
Last year, I was talking about me for the last year. She said, Skip said I wasn't old enough.
I had to come up with something, Jack.
Yeah.
Well, Jack, thanks for the great fish stories. Everybody, the great Captain Jack Morrow. Yep, I'll tell you what a memory. You want to talk about history. He named off everybody, even the ladies' names that fished on the boat. What a great memory, great stories. Wish I had a memory like that. Our next honoree tonight is Captain Billy Harrison. Let's show the video and learn a little bit more about the world-famous Captain Billy Harrison.
Billy Harrison was born in Miami, Florida, and grew up in Coconut Grove. The waterfront of the Coconut Grove area was lined with commercial fishing boats at the time, bringing in catches of mullet, mackerel, lobster, stone crabs, and shrimp. Billy rode his bike to elementary school just up the street from these docks, and soon began picking up work there after school. When Billy turned 13, he took his first real job at the Miami Seaquarium. Soon after, he visited the famous Pier 5 charter boat dock in downtown Miami. Surrounded by the excitement of the anglers, boats, and piles of fish on the docks, Billy knew he had found his calling. He fished with many great captains, including the man he cites as his greatest influence, fellow legendary captain Buddy Carey. His fishing career began in his hometown of Miami, but would soon take him all over the world. In the early 1960s, Billy started marlin fishing in the Bahamas. In 1966, he traveled to Puerto Rico to fish the San Juan International Billfish Tournament with Roy Camaro and Ralph Christensen, Jr. In 1969, Billy fished for blue marlin off the North Drop of St. Thomas for the first time, and it was there that his desire to tag and release marlin and giant bluefin tuna began. In 1986, he was given an award from NOAA for tagging the most blue marlin of any captain. Billy has fished the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Sea of Cortez. He lists his most memorable trips as 12 trips to Lower Africa, 4 seasons on the Great Barrier Reef of Australia, and many trips to Panama, Costa Rica, Guatemala, Cabo San Lucas, El Salvador, Ecuador, the Galapagos, Colombia, and Venezuela. The IGFA is proud to present Captain Billy Harrison with the Tommy Gifford Award.
And as usual, to tell you a little bit about Billy, we got 3 great fast storytellers. Captain Bouncer Smith, Ray Roscher, and from Costa, Amanda Sabin. Would you please come to the stage for your storytelling? Bouncer's going first. You guys gonna rest? All right. You get some color in the story here with Captain Bounce. Be a lot of enthusiasm on this one, I got a feeling. You ever see him do a fishing seminar? You can never sleep through that one. And you'll learn a lot.
Oh boy, getting deep around here. Suffice it to say that all of us have idols in our lives. And Captain Billy Harrison is one of my idols. The first time that I really became familiar with Billy was when he teamed up with the Webb cousins and Mike Carey, and they went out and put Miami sword fishing on the map. Going out at night and catching broadbill swordfish. And first night they went out, as I understand the story, they ran out of line on all their tackle. And the second night they caught a couple fish over 300 pounds. And Miami fishing's never been the same. For that matter, the East Coast of the United States, nobody gets any sleep when you mention swordfish. It really was some great times. Thank goodness somebody figured out daytime fishing. But all through my career, Billy's been one of the captains that I've always idolized, because while I was staying, watching the home waters, he was one of the guys that had the nerve to go all over the world, make great sacrifices, but improve fishing all over the world by sharing what they learned and developed in Miami, and then learned and developed in other places, and moved around the world just spreading their knowledge everywhere they went. But Captain Billy Harrison has been one of my idols my whole fishing career. And I can't thank you for all the opportunities you've given me to dream about those other places. And then I got to read his book a couple months ago. And if you haven't read his book, you can't appreciate what a great conservationist he was. I think there was never more than 50 blacks or God knows how many other fish in a day. But Billy writes a great book as well, but he also prefaces it with saying, never interrupt a great fishing story with the truth. So not only is he a great fisherman, a great teacher, but he's also a great storyteller. And I thank you every time I think of your name, Billy. You've really been an inspiration in my life. Thank you.
Captain Ray Roscher.
Well, Bouncer already said everything I was going to say. But first of all, I'd like to take a second. Thank you, Skip, for coming up with this plan, and the board members and the IGFA, because it's really a great opportunity for us to really understand, a lot of the younger generation to understand, how we got here. And thank you for, as Bouncer said, sharing knowledge. So, it's funny, when you're young, you don't always think about the events that may happen tomorrow and how it may affect your life. One of mine was meeting Billy. My best friend at the time was Jimmy Lewis, and my dad bowled with his dad on Thursday night. It's Bob Lewis, and I kind of weaseled my way onto that boat for about a year, and then Jimmy got a job with Bill, and Bill who, and but he was going away for the whole summer, so that related to my first big escape at age 17, and I didn't know how I was going to get on that boat, but I knew I was going to get there. And somehow Billy cracked the door open, and I ran through it. And of course, I didn't know if I was going to get paid or anything. That's kind of minor at that point in your life. And turned out to be one of the greatest moves. I kind of say he prepped me for college. That was my summer before college. And the reason I say that is not that he told me any grandiose things about, building anything or doing anything magnificent, but taught me a lot of things about life. The funniest thing about Bill was he was really smart. He took two 17-year-old guys and pitted them against each other. Every morning was a tournament. So he achieved a great, pretty short tournament rule sheet, but it was really wonderful, because a rose fish was 1 point, a tile fish was 2 points, and a grouper was 4 points. And you can figure out the rest. Two young kids. It didn't matter. It really didn't even matter what we were competing for, but he knew that was the best way to get things done, so we'd have plenty of fish for the fish market back home. We drive all the way back from Key West on usually Thursday night and sell fish over the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And those were just great, great times in my life. And, you know, the part that followed that was probably, not probably, definitely better. I mean, the things that Bill shared with me throughout my life, I got a chance to fish South Africa. As Bouncer said, you know, we were there to fish with Philip Kuipers, and Bobby Jenkins can attest to what a gift that was, that you and Billy went first. I went the second year. And our job was to go around to all the fishing clubs in South Africa. Philip was the head of the National Fishing Organization. And, you know, share knowledge. You know, at that age, I was not as aware of the importance of that, to Bouncer's point. You know, it's really important to share things. And you know, as you get older, you realize what a gift that is. It's the gift you can give to the, you know, not just to the next generation, but to other friends. And then to get to fish St. Thomas with Ralph Christensen, and to get to fish for bluefin tunas with the Merritt family on the Caliban. And, you know, those are things in my life that I can look back and say, it was never any better. So thank you, Bill.
And now we'd like to welcome Amanda from Costa Sunglasses, one of our great sponsors. She's got some surprise statement for us here.
Oh, no. I'm so honored to speak about one of my fishing mentors tonight. Unlike Ray, I've only known Bill for about 5 years, and we've only gotten to fish together a handful of times. That handful of times, though, turned into one of the most memorable and incredible experiences of my life. Through work, I suddenly found myself tasked with pulling together a team to catch a bluefin tuna in Cat Key. And the more I learned about this project, the more impossible that task seemed to become. You know, nobody had caught one of these things in over 5 years. They just weren't there like they used to be. So we had a tall task ahead of us. But we had Ray Roscher, and we had the Merritt family, and we needed a captain. And I knew we needed the best of the best. So I asked around the industry, I asked people in the know, and Bill's name kept popping up. Ray introduced me to Bill, and instantly I knew he was the man for the job. After months of preparation, the weather was finally calling for south wind, and it was time to go. In the week I spent riding the tower with Bill, he told me countless stories of his time in those waters. He taught me about the history, the fishery, the people, the success, the failures, and all the skills that it needed to catch a bluefin there. He taught me about the wind and the currents, the sea life that we were seeing. And not only did he possess a lifetime of knowledge and skills, but more importantly, he understood the value of sharing those skills. Finally, after seeing a few schools, we had our shot. Bill expertly made a pass, and we were hooked up. I've had the privilege of fishing with a great number of captains in my day, and in a situation with this much on the line, with such an important fish, sometimes there can be a little bit of yelling. I'm sure none of you other captains do that. But I have never seen somebody maintain their cool like Bill did. He didn't raise his voice once and was in complete control the whole time. So I was a little excited. I might have been screaming a little bit, but I was so excited when we released that fish. It was so much more than just accomplishing our goals and catching it. You know, I knew I had just experienced something special. I got to see a master working at his craft, and he did it expertly. Some people in this room have probably had the opportunity to fish with someone that is considered a legendary captain. But only the luckiest among us have fished with someone truly as amazing as Captain Bill Harrison. Please help me in congratulating him.
At this time, I'd like to ask Captain Billy Harrison to come up here and accept the Tommy Gifford Award. You got it, Jimmy? Hold on. There you go. Sorry. Captain Bill, the mic is yours.
Well, I want to thank everybody for being so nice and saying nice things. And it's nice to be here for your peers. They respect you. But I didn't attend the first many of these, and I really am thankful to Barkey because Barkey just told me I had to do it. And after I went to the first one, I realized what a great archival institute this is to bring together everybody and remember things from the past, which are going to be forgotten without some way putting things together, whether it be by pictures or recognition. But for those of you who don't know me, you saw in the video, I grew up in Coconut Grove, which is south of downtown Miami. And I was very lucky. I could ride my bicycle down to the docks, and they had lobster boats and shrimp boats and mullet boats. And I guess being naive and young and loving what I did, I got to ride with a lot of them. So I learned a lot about the ocean. As it said on the video, I got a job with a Seaquarium because I knew Bill Gray, and I was 13, and I was receiving a paycheck. Now, I didn't know politics at that time, but when the last day of my summer stay came, the lawyers realized that you couldn't get a work permit at 13, you had to be 14. So I left and went to school the next day, and then I went back the following summer to go to work, totally legal. But that's sort of the way things turn. But I learned so much at the Seaquarium because I work with porpoises, and I work with everything big, and I got the long line sharks, and I got to do a little of everything because whenever they needed somebody, I was the first to volunteer. But my life was the greatest life of anybody I can think of. When I was high school, I got to fish on the boats and weekend. I was being paid for it. And the first charter boat I worked on was a guy named Gordon, and I can't remember the name of the boat. It was a lapstrake Chris Craft. But the good thing about him, because he wasn't a good fisherman, was that he was docked at the Chamber of Commerce. So I got to meet Red Stewart and his brother Bob. So I'm stepping into history now because they have both sailed on. But I fished with people like Connie Myra out of the Castaways, and Connie was the first female captain that I knew, and I learned a lot from her, not from her fishing ability. I was so naive when she told me she was an exotic dancer at one time. I thought that you danced on stage with a snake, and I was 50% right. But I had to give Connie credit because she would take 6 people out, males or female, every day on a half a day and come back in. But Connie would look them in the eye and would know everyone's name, and she never missed as she talked to the people all during the morning or afternoon, and she said goodbye each one by name. Now, I tried, but I could never do that. But you have to take away the good qualities of the people that you fished with. And I was lucky enough to always see good qualities in people like that. But I fished with Jimmy O'Neill out of Key Biscayne. And Jimmy was a real gentleman captain and a wonderful fisherman. And it just worked out. The days when I started were the days that we did everything right. And Jimmy taught me business because Jimmy built his own boat, and he took anything and everything because he had the bank to pay off. And we used to go to Bimini on not very much money and go to Chub Key on not very much money. And we put everything in the boat back then. I lived in that era, and I don't apologize for it. And I made money by mounting fish and selling fish and things like that. But when I moved to Pier 5 and started to fish with Buddy Carey, who I'm going to talk about and Bobby Jenkins is going to talk about, there's no way you can write volumes, you can talk for hours. Buddy is a magical person who loved fishing, and he was the best and the best at it. And I'm going to come back up later on and tell you more about Buddy. But I got to go tuna fishing with George and Bill Sterrett at a Cat Key, and they're known as the Greeks. And everybody here who tuna fished, greatest respect for them. And when I left them, I had so much knowledge on that, and they were so gifted to give me all these things. Then later on, as I moved around, I got to go to fish Australia with Peter Bristol, who's sitting here. And I went 4 seasons over there, and Peter has come back and stayed with me for 20 years, every boat show, and we have great fun here, and every one of his friends looks forward to us going around and seeing everybody. But one of the times Peter got to cancel, I called my good friend Peter Wright up. I said, you got room for somebody for a few days? And so I fished 10 days with him and probably got some of the best pictures of my life because Peter was a great boat handler. And the weather was beautiful and the black marlin bit. And I got pictures of 1,000-pound fish jumping at the boat. I even fished with Mike Benitez. And it's funny, Mike Benitez, who got every conservation award, was a phenomenal marlin fisherman, and he was a real marlin fisherman because he didn't turn them all loose till the end. But he put over 2,000 blue marlin in the boat. You got to know how to drive a boat to do that. But his best day was 7 blue marlin, and he used to talk about it, and gosh, Ellen Peel talked about it. But he never told anybody that I was running the boat, and he was the mate because we were running from Puerto Rico to St. Thomas. And, of course, I'm never going to say anything to Mike because I respected him so much. But we went later on to fish Hawaii and stuff together. So Mike and I had great times together. But unfortunately, I knew that I was going to need to have a job full-time. And I could travel the world, but I had to make enough money to pay for a house or a truck. So I built a 34-foot boat, and I outfitted it with bandits. And Ray was talking to you about it. We did a lot of bottom fishing with it. And there is no way to tell people here when you talk about the number of groupers or the number of amberjacks and the number of other fish that you caught. And I put a helm in the back so I could fish alone. And I fished with that boat for 30 years. I did carry a crew sometimes, but it was rare. But for those of you who don't know what work is all about, during amberjack seasons, I limited my catch to 60 amberjack a day. And that was normally between 1 and 2 o'clock. And the reason that is, because the hydraulics pull them up, you don't do that. But you got to gaff them and lift them in the boat, which is 1. You got to pick them up and walk them up to the fish hold, which is 15 feet wide and 4 feet deep. When you get to the dock, you got to lift them out and put them on the deck. You got to carry them back and put them on the dock. Then you got to gut them and you got to pick them up. So you're talking about 2,000 pounds lifting in a day. So as a commercial fisherman, you learn and you earn everything that you make. But enough of my commercial boat. It gave me the opportunity to work on my own whenever I wanted to. I just got out of bed, went down there, got the bait out of the freezer, and went to sea. And I came in and I sold my fish, and I didn't need anybody, and I went home that night. But I was so lucky. I got to fish both sides of Mexico. I got to fish, of course, Texas and Louisiana. But as I went down, I fished Costa Rica, Guatemala, San Salvador. I fished Ecuador. I fished the Galapagos. I fished Venezuela. I fished Colombia. I made 12 trips to Lower Africa. Fished Zimbabwe, Botswana, South Africa. I made wonderful, wonderful friends. I fished up north, Massachusetts, or North Carolina for tunas. Fished with Cookie up in Prince Edward Island. But I don't want to bore you with all the commercial trips, but I just wanted to say I had the best life. I had the best life of anybody in the world. And I thank Skip for putting this together. I also thank Skip for sitting with me after he published his book and say, you got to do it now, because I always had stories. And I fished the most wonderful people, and everyone had stories. And it's not the fish I caught. It's the people I met and that I fished with and that I shared the stories with. And like, I didn't expect Bouncer to come up and say anything, nor did I remember much that he said until he said it. But the only thing about it is he's right. The book will make you laugh. The book is about people and a lot of dead fish. But read it and you'll enjoy it. And I want to thank Skip again for putting this together. It's a lot of work. Oh, okay. Did I take that back? No. You can still talk. No. I can be back up here.
I should have wrote my book after I got this award, because now everybody's read my book. I'll never get this award, so I'm done. Our next honoree tonight is Captain Ralph Delft. Let's show a great video of Ralph in his prime and his great catches.
Captain Ralph Delft boasted an angling and guiding resume that few can approach. A fishing enthusiast from the age of 5, Ralph was a structural engineer by trade in the 1960s and 70s, but that didn't stop him from chasing fish from Miami down to the Florida Keys in his free time. He and his fishing buddies founded the Miami Sport Fishing Club in 1965 and regularly competed against one another to see who could catch the biggest fish on the lightest tackle. In 1967, he won the prestigious Master Angler Award in the Metropolitan South Florida Fishing Tournament, and 2 years later, he did it again, the first angler to ever do so. As luck would have it, the bottom fell out of the construction business in the early 1970s, giving Ralph a great excuse to pack up his family, move down to Key West, and become a full-time guide. Success certainly followed. Ralph went on to win the Guides Achievement Award in the Met for 20 consecutive years, guiding more master anglers than any other captain in Met history. He was the first captain to guide more than 100 of his clients to IGFA World Record catches and was presented with the IGFA Lifetime Achievement Award in 2008. Over his career, he led anglers to a total of 296 world records and numerous tournament wins. Knowledge, experience, hard work, and the adherence to the rules of sport fishing have been the foundation on which I have built my reputation, said Ralph. And what a reputation it was. At wreck, reef, blue water, flats, and inshore fishing, he was a master. He developed tackle and techniques for fighting giant bluefin tuna on stand-up gear and worked with tackle, boat, and motor manufacturers on developments that are prized in the sport fishing world to this day. Ralph passed away in 2016, but the family fishing business continues to thrive under his sons Captains Mike, Rob, and Billy Delft. The IGFA is proud to present Captain Ralph Delft with the Tommy Gifford Award.
Well, here to tell the stories and a little bit more about Ralph, please welcome Captain Ken Harris, and then it'll be Marty Arostody to the stage. You're welcome.
The podium is the arch enemy of the short. I promised myself one thing: I wouldn't get very emotional tonight. It's hard to do. But in 1978, I went to Key West for the first time with my good buddy and also a legend captain, Bruce Cronin. Bruce was a mathematical wizard. There were 4 wrecks in the Gulf: the Sturtevant, the Gunboar, the Basilka, and the Luckenbach. The Luckenbach at that time they were all sunk by our own mines trying to get a U-boat that was in the Gulf of Mexico during World War II. The Luckenbach had half the world's tungsten steel on board when it went down. These were all Dutch freighters. So this was an amazing wreck if you could find it. This was before Loran Sea. You had a compass and your boat, and you went out there in 20-footers. I had a 20-foot Dusky. So Bruce and I decided to see if we could find the Luckenbach. We did all the mathematical equations, and what we came up with was if we ran our Dusky at 4,500 RPMs out of Northwest Channel, going by Smith Shoal at a 003 heading, and you drove for 37 minutes, you drop a buoy. Now you drift for 5 minutes, drop another buoy, factor that by 6, and then go anchor next to Ralph because he found it an hour ago. The sort of point of that story is Ralph could just do things other people could not. I have said over and over, and listen, this room is full of great captains and great fishermen, and all have their niche. There was just never anybody quite like Ralph to do the extraordinary. When I started guiding in 1980, and Ralph, I'd say, took me under his wing, I don't want you to misunderstand. Ralph, it's dribs and drabs. You earn every piece of advice you ever got from that guy. In fact, the first thing he said to me was, "Ken, do you like ham and cheese?" I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, then you can make it as a guide here in Key West, because you're going to be eating a lot of that for lunch." So Bruce and I, on our first day in Key West, actually, that I ever fished Key West, we first bait we put in the water, we caught a 63-pound king mackerel on 12, a new IGFA record that knocked off Ralph's 58-pounder on 12 at the time. We were feeling pretty full of ourselves, and when the Miami Herald asked us about the fish, we said, yeah, we'd like to compete in the Met, you know, show them guys down there that the guys from Broward County have good anglers too. Ralph later on would tell me he thought that was cute. And as it turns out, he was right. So the first time I actually saw Ralph in the boat, he had Jim Hansen, who's right there. Jim was every Thursday. That's how you knew it was Thursday. Jim fished with Ralph every Thursday. Ralph fished pretty much the same 6 people 6 days a week, and then on Sundays he would let somebody new in. This guy dominated fishing. He invented and did things that were just unbelievable. But I will never forget, I was sitting next to Kenny Bittner on the Bait Stealer, another very well-known angler. Kenny actually, at the time, I think still does, holds the record for the largest fish on fly that Ralph guided him to, 366-pound Goliath grouper. I'm sitting next to Ken, and here comes Ralph on the vitamin C that you saw the picture. The vitamin C, a 20-footer. What was amazing was Ralph had moved the console back. I don't think you realize the innovations that made later on in fishing, where he could actually sit on that splash well. But I will never forget him pulling up with Jim Hansen. Now, we're anchored on the Lukenbach, and we're catching cobia, and there's giant amberjacks. And the Lukenbach before Loran was something to be seen. But here comes Ralph and Jim. Ralph always wore a bandana like a cowboy mask. Key West cowboy, I began to call it. He pulled up to the wreck, did not anchor. Ralph pulled a blue runner out of the boat, hooked it on, and began what was a style that he invented called teasing. I swear to you, it looked like the whole ocean was trying to eat that one blue runner. Cobias that back then we took for granted, you know, I mean, we're not talking 40-pound cobias, we're talking 50, 60-pound cobias, but Ralph is gleaning over everything. He's looking at the different amberjacks that are, and it's no mean feat to keep the runner from being eaten while you pick and choose the right fish. He tells Jim that's the one, and they catch, as I remember it, a 38-pound Cuda, might have been 40 on fly, a world record. I watched them go off with that fish, and then he just left us. And I turned around to Bruce, and I go, who is this guy? You know, we began paying attention to the Met and how all of these outstanding catchers were authored by the same guy. And then when you add on top of that that Ralph could take 5 people, 6 people at the beginning of the Met, they were all competitive. It would get whittled down to 2 people without stepping on their toes. Jim, you're going to catch this, and this is what you're going to, and author this and dominate that tournament like nobody before him. Now, I've had the honor in my life of, I look out here, I see Rick Murphy. I got to do some TV shows with Rick, who I love. We had some great times. Jim Hansen, Marty's here, Marty might hold more world records than any angler. I fish with Flip Pallet, I fish with Stu App, I fish with Mark Sosin, Jose Wahebe. I grew up with Jose. We were as tight as could be. Bob Trosset, another legendary captain. We are all better, and we are what we are one way or another because of Ralph. So whether he was teaching you or making you compete, he made you better. But there was never, you ask any of the people who ever fished with Ralph, he was just simply the best. I can remember, by the way, that 63-pound mackerel I was so proud of, he went on to beat it with a 75-pound king mackerel on 12, followed up the very next day with a 73-pounder on 16, and then went on to catch a 63-pounder on 8-pound. Okay. Now I'm pulling over to Jim Hansen again one day during the first year I knew him. I jigged up. This is just before I started guiding. I jigged on pure 10-pound spin. I caught a 22-pound black grouper. Didn't know my groupers real well. I was from Fort Lauderdale. We weren't really much in the bottom fishing as we were down in Key West. Went on, as we're running to the west, I look over, I see the vitamin C. Well, now I want to talk to Ralph. I'd like to get to know this guy a little bit. How can it hurt? I pull over to the vitamin C and I hold up that group and I go, Ralph, I got this on 10-pound spin, pure. And I go, now I'm not really sure, is this a black or a gag? And he goes, oh no, that's a black. And he goes, Jim, show him ours. Jim goes down. When I tell you, 100-pound black grouper. And I took my grouper and I went like this. And I said, Bruce, I'm never showing that guy a fish again. Not doing it. Now, when we had caught that 63-pound king mackerel, I had turned to Bruce and said we had just won the Fort Lauderdale billfish tournament for, I don't know, at least second time in a row. We were pretty proud of ourselves down here. And we caught that mackerel, and I didn't know they got that big, and I had said to Bruce, I'm moving here. I'm moving to Key West. And within the year, I was living in Key West, and had Ralph, like I said, Ralph more than, he does not, he's got 3 sons there, great sons, Mike, Robbie, Billy. If you think he jumped on board and said, here's how you do this, this, and this, son, and you're going to be successful, this was a hard guy. He was a hard man. He showed up to work every morning. It was almost robotic. He was there every morning. He did the job every day. Now, he loved fishing, and I like to think that I knew Ralph maybe better than anybody. We spent at least 1,000 days with our boats tied off together. By that, I mean we'd both load up on pilchards or whatever we were doing for chumming that day. He'd drop one anchor over here, I'd drop my anchor over here. We'd back up to each other, toss the rope across the bows so that the boats wanted to pull apart, because we learned that we could have twice as much bait with half the effort. One guy has to rig, the other guy's always chumming. It really worked, and I learned so much. And I love Ralph so much. One of the lucky things for me, when Ralph was on his deathbed, I called him. They tried to explain to me, this is it. Sorry. I didn't believe it. It's Ralph. He's indestructible. He's there every day. Treasure when you get to tell somebody you love them, and they tell you they love you. And I miss them every day. Thanks.
You got to untangle it there. You know how to do this.
I don't like to get behind this thing. First, I want to thank the Delft family on behalf of my wife, Roberta, my son, Martini, and myself, who fished so many years with Ralph, for giving us an opportunity to come up here and say a few words. We are extremely grateful and honored to have had that opportunity. Ralph was an icon of fishing for many years, as has already been described. Whether in his home waters in Key West, or tarpon fishing for a tournament in Alamorada, or bluefin tuna fishing in Cape Cod, or maybe what I think was one of his favorites, fishing out west for steelhead and salmon and trout. He was a leader in every respect and an innovator. Having said that, on a lighter note, I want to remind the Delft family that you picked the smallest guide and the smallest angler to come up and talk on behalf of Ralph. And Rick Murphy, I'm sorry, you were a distant third. I want to tell you a story. which I think describes Ralph's innovation. One day, many, many years ago, we were fishing the Holly Tarpon tournament, and Ralph said to me during the tournament, "Marty, this afternoon when we finish fishing, let's drive to Homestead because I'm designing this new boat," which was the last Vitamin C, a converted contender hull. And I want to show it to you and see how it's coming along. So we went, and he was very proud to describe to me all the deck design that he was doing on his own boat. But he was especially interested in showing me this big live well that he had created in the front of the boat that was covered by the coffin, the typical Key West coffin box, and 2 hydraulics and lifted up. And his dream was to go out and catch huge fish for world records, bring them back alive, and then process them for a world record according to the rules, and then release them alive. And little did I know on that day that a few years later, I would get to share that dream with Ralph myself. We were able to release 4 world records over 200 pounds and 1 world record over 300 pounds that was 385 pounds in 2006. It was the largest fly record at that time. But the most important thing was not that it was so big or that it was the largest. It was that we released it alive. And we could not have done that without Ralph's innovation. That to me was very special because he was always a great conservationist and always concerned about the fishery and the environment, and I will always remember that. There is something, though, that was even more important than that when it came to people like me that were his anglers and Jim Hansen, who we are here representing. Ralph exuded self-confidence and a huge competitive spirit. When you entered the environment of the Vitamin C, when you jumped on that deck, that spirit that Ralph possessed permeated every one of us anglers. And as a result of that, we were able to do things that we could have never done alone. And it was not just his instruction. It was an aura that came with Ralph that penetrated every one of his anglers. And for that, I can tell you we are very grateful because we learned so much and accomplished so much as a result of this great man. And lastly, I want to say that Ralph was a wonderful family man and that I learned a lot from that. Because many times when you're fishing with a guide and you get to know him real well, you learn not only about angling, you learn about life itself. Ralph raised 3 boys that are sitting here today with his family, taught them how to fish, and then when they were old enough, set each one of them individually on their way to become very successful guides and family men. And now, some of them are here. Billy's here with his children who are already learning to be great mates, and I'm delighted to see that you're following in your dad's footsteps. That kind of commitment to family is priceless, and for that, I'm very grateful. The last thing that I want to say, Ralph, we miss you very much. Thank you.
To accept the Tommy Gifford Award on behalf of his dad, please welcome Billy Delft to the stage. You can invite them all up, Billy. Bring them on. One of you guys got a few words for us?
Yeah, we got a couple. So Marty was right. My dad was, one of the things he always taught us is you always put the smallest guy in with the pictures of the fish. It always makes the fish look bigger. So you caught us. But I was reminded of a couple stories as you guys were talking, and I remember one time, my mom's not able to make it here today, but I remember one time we always told fish stories, right? I mean, at dinner time, that's pretty much all we ever talked about is fishing. My mom was so sick and tired of hearing about it, and we're all sitting there talking, and what did you do today? And we're talking about what we caught, and everything. And my mom finally goes, that's it. I don't want to hear you guys talk about work one time at the dinner table. That's it. No fishing talk. And that's it. We're not going to do it. So Rob and I and Mike, we all sat there and nobody said a word. We just got up, finished eating, got up and went off into the living room and then started talking about fishing again. But it's hard to explain what it was like to be raised by that guy. Such big shoes to fill. He didn't cut us any slack either. Anytime he could stick it to us and catch a bigger fish, he always did. I remember he had a great sense of humor. One of my favorite stories was with a dear friend of his that wasn't able to make it here today either, but was Joe Robinson. And I wasn't here for this, but it's my favorite story because it typified his personality and his sense of humor. But my dad caught a swordfish in Flamingo. Joe Robinson was guiding at the time, and they were out fishing, and Joe could see in the distance it looked like my dad had a billfish on the boat, and he thought maybe it was a sawfish. And Joe says, well, let's go over there and take a look at this, and starts pulling over to my dad, and they get a little bit closer, and holy cow, it's a swordfish. And as they got closer where they could talk to each other, my dad is down in the John boat. It was a John boat, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah. He was down in the John boat working with his fish and looks up and sees Joe and grabs the hat off of his head and throws it down and says, damn it, Joe, you found my favorite swordfish spot. And that's the kind of humor that we lived with every day with him. He had high expectations. He was, without a doubt, I've fished with, just like these guys have, so many different people, and I've never met anybody as gifted as he was when it came to fishing. And you guys have a fish story you want to tell real quick?
Just one?
Yeah. Here, go ahead.
It's dinner time.
The acronym IGFA was growing up, was very common in our household. I can't tell you the number of occasions that Dad would come home from fishing. Hey, what'd you do today? We got probably 2 or 3 potential IGFA world records. Oh, okay. And off we go. Never gave it a second thought. My dad was fierce. If you were a good fisherman, and I mean good, he made you the best. If you were weak, he made you strong. He always used to tell me, he goes, you're just an extension of my hands. One time, Kenny and my dad had just graduated high school. And we hooked up about excuse me. We hooked about an 800 plus pound bluefin tuna. I was 145 pounds soaking wet. I've made it a little bit in Turks and Caicos Islands of the Bahamas with blues. Thought I was pretty tough. I wrapped up on a 400-pound blue marlin one time. Did get jerked out of the boat. Well, we hooked up on this blue marlin, and back then we would splice our mono leader into the Dacron. What was it?
Bluefin tuna.
Bluefin tuna. We would splice the mono into the Dacron about 20 feet with a whip finish and super glue. But we were using this, I look back on it now, it was so prehistoric. But we had a cable mouse trap inside the herring that when the tuna would eat the herring, you know, the cable would pop out, and that was your chafing gear.
Yeah, I invented that. That wasn't prehistoric.
Looking back at it now. Well, when this mouse trap would go off, I mean, the rod would bounce up, and it looked like, you know, you would lose a fish, and then it would just double right back over. And I watched my dad, and that stand-up harness was watching like pure art. You have never seen a human being in a stand-up harness. That man was in his element. You're talking hitting, Kenny, if I'm wrong, 70 pounds of pressure in a stand-up harness to where you knew if that rod broke, it would split him in half to his heels. Make a long story short. Well, anyways, that Dacron started this slip inside that splice, and that mouse trap went off again. Boom, boom, boom. My dad goes, oh, okay, the mouse trap went off again. Well, here it goes again. Boom, boom, boom. By now, my dad realized, holy cow, it's slipping. So we get up on top of the fish. Kenny's running the boat. We get up. We can see the leader, and there's only about 12 inches left. My dad says, Kenny, you're going to run up on this fish. Mike, you're going to take a rap on it. And I said, I'm going to do what? I know how fast these fish can run and what they're going to do to 145-pound Mike wrapped up on this fish. So I took a half a wrap. And I'm like, please, Kenny, stay with this fish. And I'm like, this has happened really fast. I'm like, well, what's Dad going to do? Well, my dad has me take a wrap on the mono leader, and behind me, my dad throws an overhand knot in it and goes to start winding it through the guides. Well, it jams up on the rod tip. My dad kind of pulls the rod out of the side. He clips off the rod tip. Now he's on the mono leader on this fish, and he is locked up, full drag, hands jammed up in it, everything he has. And we ended up landing that fish and then towing it home. Got home like 2 o'clock in the morning, soaking wet. That fish ended up dressing out at, I don't remember the weight, it's 800 plus. Yeah. How big?
Whole, it was 837.
837.
We also caught that 1,200 pounder.
I've always said that and I thank you to this day, my wife, my children, all thank you.
Well, he had 2 other sons, so we didn't.
Let Robbie tell it.
Thank you very much for this honor. And if he was here, he would. My dad was a very humble man. He probably would have poo-pooed the idea. But thank you very much on behalf of the Delft family.
I got to catch a bigger bluefin tuna with my dad than you did. 1,154-pound bluefin tuna on stand-up. Thank you, IGFA, for doing this. Ralph, my father, gave me the best life.
I got to grow up in Key West with the best fishing guide. He made me work for everything that I got today. He didn't hand me everything. He made me work for it. He also gave me the life of living in Montana, and then introduced me to the giant bluefin tunas in Massachusetts. The best part about it is that he introduced me to all of you, and the stories are priceless. I'm very thankful for everything he's done for myself, my family, and the community of the fishing world. And he will always be my hero. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Congratulations. What an honor to you back, man. Well deserved for many years. What a man he was. You could tell just by ways he raised his kids and the way they feel for Dad, man. We're so glad he got this award. He really, really deserved it. Our next honoree will be the late Captain Buddy Carey. And let's show a video of some real history here.
Buddy Carey was born in Key West, Florida in 1917. His father, charter boat captain Oliver Carey, moved the family up to Miami once Buddy started school to take advantage of the thriving tourism in the area. Buddy joined the family business early on when he started mating on his father's boat at the age of 13. In 1932, at the age of just 15, Buddy bought his first charter boat. It took him a year to get the sea boots ready for charter. But she would be the first of many that would see Buddy through his 60 years of charter fishing, making him both a staple and a legend of Miami's Pier 5. Buddy lost some fishing time during World War II when he ran an 80-foot Coast Guard boat back and forth from Miami to Key West twice a week. During his charter career, Buddy typically ran over 250 days a year and put many anglers on their first fish. He would joke with his mates about how many guests had to be instructed to crank the reel clockwise, as most of them had never seen one before. A skilled fisherman to be sure, Buddy was happy to share his techniques with others in the industry. IGFA Hall of Famers Alan and Buddy Merritt would drive down to Pier 5 once a week in the winter to pick up fresh ballyhoo from Buddy, since no one was catching them in the Fort Lauderdale area at the time. During their visits, Buddy taught the Merritts how to use wire lines to troll for grouper and coax amberjack from deep water wrecks. He also taught legendary captains Red and Bob Stewart how to successfully troll for gag groupers, bringing 20 to 30 gags to the dock a day when no other captain knew how to catch them. Buddy had many longtime mates who went on to become successful captains in both the charter and private boat industry, including Billy Harrison, Red Hagen, Bobby Jenkins, Kenny Spaulding, Pete Thompson, and many more. The IGFA is proud to present Captain Buddy Carey with the Tommy Gifford Award.
Before I call the next two speakers on stage, I want to thank everybody for the respect you've shown tonight. You've been very quiet and respectful of the speakers, even if they talk long, short, and we really appreciate that. It's very respectful of you. To speak on behalf of Buddy Carey tonight, we have Captain Charlie Cluck and Bobby Jenkins, who worked for him for a long time. Would you guys please come up and tell us a couple more fish stories, please? Who's going to help who here?
Thanks, Skip. I'm going to go quick at first because I'm going to make it a little, it's getting late. We're going to wrap it up a little bit here. And I know Bobby's got some great stories. And before I start, though, Billy Harrison, when he came in with those two swordfish, what he forgot to tell you was that I had the charter boat right next to him. And I was about green with envy. I can't tell you when he came in with those swordfish that how envious we were. And unfortunately, I know that he rode on one of the Cuban longline boats a few weeks before that. So the next week, you know where I was. I was on a longline boat. And I got to tell you, that was probably the worst experience I ever had in my life. They had smudge pots. They didn't have lights. You had smudge pots. The kind, remember those things that had in the streets that you lit up that had the gasoline in them or kerosene, you know? And they put them out, and I'm on this little Cuban boat out there, and they got 3 miles, one mile, and about every 100 yards they put out one of these smudge pots. And when the smudge pot went under, they knew they had a swordfish, and we'd run down. Of course, the night I went, you know what the weather was. About 6 foot in the Gulf Stream all night. And so I want to thank Billy Harrison for that experience. And then I want to thank Skip over here, because this is a great venue, and it's a real honor to be here with a lot of you folks. And you may not know me. I fished with Steve when he first started guiding down at Bonefish, and I had to laugh because Kenny Harrison, I think the first year you started, I was one of your clients that went out with you. I made a couple jokes, which you didn't find very funny. But you know, there's one thing that I have to tell you that about Buddy Carey, because after I left the charter business, I went all over the world and fished and did my thing, and everywhere I'd go, I'd say, well, I had a charter boat on Pier 5. And they said, well, you know, I fished with Buddy Carey. I fished with Buddy Carey 3 years ago. I fished with Buddy Carey. And you know, one of the things they always said, he's a class act. He is a class act. I guess I must have heard that 100 times in my life. And to this day, I'm here to tell you, Buddy Carey was a class act. I think he touched so many people. Red Stewart, Red Hagen, Tommy Gifford. It's on and on and on. Everybody that came off of that pier became really good fishermen. Billy Harrison, I know, is going to tell you some stories about him, and he's got some great stories. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my life, because in 1969, myself and a friend, Richard, oh, by the way, thank you for not going too much into detail about my life in your book, Billy. I appreciate that. We came down to the dock in '69. We got out of University of Miami. We're accountant degree. Neither one of us wanted to be an accountant. We knew we hated accounting. You don't want to be an accountant. I'm sorry for anybody here that is. But you know, it's tough. So we come down there and we decide we're going to get in the charter business. And Buddy Carey told me 10, 15 reasons why you don't want to be in the charter business. But he said, if you're interested, Bob Lewis is selling the rerun. That was Jim Knight's boat. He said, go talk to him. He was over at Tommy's yard. So we went over and we talked to him, and Richard Stanzik and myself, and we went over there, and he said, well, I want this amount of money. And we said, wow. So we scraped together all of our pennies and our dimes and our nickels and our shekels, and we were short I think about $25,000, and I went to my mother and I said, Mom, I need to borrow some money. She said, what for? I said, to buy a charter boat. She says, what? Well, thank God she trusted me, and she gave me the money, and Richard and I bought our first charter boat there. We bought the old rerun, and we came into Pier 5. Now, we'd caught a lot of sailfish and marlin and a handful of tunas, and we thought we were pretty good fishermen. But I'm going to tell you something. When you pulled into Pier 5, you better have your big boy panties on, because our first 2 or 3 weeks there, we were really, really struggling. I mean, Buddy comes in with 200, 300, 400 pounds of fish. We're coming in with 50. But after about 6 months, we caught on to it, and he was very, very good to me. He was a mentor, and he was a mentor to me. He taught me how to mark my wire lines. He taught me how to troll the reef. He told me how to set my spoons so that I'd catch twice as many kingfish on my spoons. He taught me how to cut a strip bait. Does anybody know what a strip bait is in here? I know the old timers do. But you know what? When you come in and you clean about 200 pounds of fish, and then you're looking down in there and you got about 60 or 80 bonitas that you got to cut strip baits out, it's not fun. But he taught us how to cut strip baits, but he taught us a lot, and he was really a great mentor. And I find this kind of a common thread among a lot of the greats in here, that you're a mentor. And I think that's really important, that you are a mentor to myself, which was a green bean at one time in my life, and I think that it's important for the fishing community and for everybody to help mentor people, and especially children, and get them into the business. I used to pile fish on the dock like there's no tomorrow. It's funny now because I'm a member, one of the founding members of the International Game Fish Tournament Association, and we practice catch and release. So I went from piling the fish on the dock to a big, big proponent of catch and release. And I think that's really a good thing too. But anyway, Buddy was a mentor of mine, so was Bob Lewis, but Buddy was probably one of the greatest all-time fishermen that I knew for putting fish on the dock. And I'm going to tell you one quick story, and then I'm going to turn it over to Bobby Jenkins, who fished with him for a lifetime. I'm sitting on the dock one day, and I see Buddy coming down the dock, and Buddy had this thing about him, you know, when he got down there, he had this little chuckle, he'd go, ha, 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 ha. You're never going to guess what happened today. Well, they all started the same way. You're never going to guess what happened today. I said, what is it, Buddy? He said, I mounted 67 feet of dolphin. I said, what? He said, 67 feet of dolphin. I said, how'd you mount 67 feet of dolphin? He said, the gentleman I had on the boat today. He says he owns a motel in Georgia, 28 rooms. And he wanted to put a dolphin in every one of the rooms. So we put a 30-inch dolphin in 28 rooms. It came out to, I'm not sure of the exact numbers, but it came out to 67 feet. And he says, you know what that means to me? I said, yeah, I know, buddy. He said, you made a little money today, didn't you? But yeah, that was a great story. But anyway, I'm going to turn this over to Bobby Jenkins. Bobby Jenkins worked for Buddy for a long time. I heard something say that Buddy ran 250 days a year. That's not true. Buddy ran 325 days of the year or more. Okay, or more. He was off on Christmas and Easter. And I'm going to tell you something. I'd be down there and my charters would cancel, and I'd look around, it'd be blowing 30, 35 out of the north, and I'd look down and here goes the sea boots heading out the dock, and I'd just shake my head. But Bobby Jenkins is the one that had to weather all that, so I'm going to turn it over to Bobby. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I have to say it's really, really, truly, for me personally, a huge honor to be here. You know, I was Bud's mate for 11 years, but during that time, I actually went down to Pier 5 to get a job and started fishing with Billy and Mike Carey. Bud's 9th boat was being completed at the time, and my name was thrown into the hat. And I really probably only got the job because I wasn't one of the guys who hung around Pier 5 all the time. I got a recommendation from another boat captain who was a longtime friend of Bud's, and so Bud gave me a tryout. But what I had to do was fish with Billy and Mike for the springtime until the boat was ready, and then I got a chance to work with Bud. And you know, I was raised by a single mother, had 2 brothers, and started work at 14, and by the time I got to Bud, I was 26 years old, I think, and I thought I knew some stuff. You know, I'd fished with a couple of really good guys, and I knew I found out I didn't know doodly. You know, when you work for somebody like Bud, it's a whole other story. Bud worked 364 days a year. We actually fished on Easter. We didn't fish on Christmas Day because that was Bud's birthday, and his wife Sevilla wouldn't let him go out. But Bud was at the dock every morning by 6 o'clock in the morning, and I had to be at the dock every morning by 6 o'clock in the morning, whether you were booked or not. And if you showed up a few minutes late, he wouldn't say anything, but he was looking at his watch when you're driving up in the parking lot, and your day went a little bit bumpier if you weren't there by 6 o'clock. And that's the way it was. And we didn't always fish 325 days a year, but there was a couple years when we probably did. But I would like to say one thing. There's no story about Bud. You know, Bud was not a great humanitarian. he was a single-focused person. He went fishing every day, and that's what he did. If he wasn't fishing, he was getting ready to go fishing. He was either painting the boat or working on tackle. He rebuilt all of his own reels. He did all of his work himself. We did all the work in the boatyard ourselves. I sanded the bottom of that boat. We painted it. But what I want to say is he wasn't a great humanitarian, but something happened in Bud's life right before I went to work for him. He came out of the dock early one morning, looking in his dock box, and here's this 17-year-old black kid hiding in the dock box, sleeping there. And so he got him up, and they started talking, and he gave him some money so he could get some breakfast, and they became friends. And that kid's name was Leonard Keith Raines, and he was a runaway from Lake City, Florida. And Bud said, "You want a job?" And he gave him a job as a washdown boy. And on Pier 5 back in those days down in Bayfront Park, you know, the winos were kind of a plague. And so if you wanted to keep the winos off your boat at night, it was beneficial to have somebody sleep on your boat. So Bud gave Geronimo a home. And well, I'm sorry to let his name go, but he said, "You want to be the washdown boy?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, how do I do it?" He says, "You just take the hose and you wash everything." So Geronimo, his name became Geronimo because he was so wild with the hose. Bud said, "You're like a wild Indian with a hose, boy." He says, "I'm going to name you Geronimo." And that name stuck with him. And he's still got that name. He still works on Pier 5, but now he works on the tourist boat. And if you go down there and you say, "Where's Leonard Raines?" Nobody has any idea. But if you say, "Where's Geronimo?" They'll say, "Oh, he's over there." Everybody knows Geronimo. Well, Geronimo was with Bud for the entire time I was there. And back in those days, we had one single man who chartered the boat 4 days a week, every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. And so we went fishing. And his name was Lee Shepherd. He was a Canadian lumberman, very, very wealthy, but all he really loved to do was fish. And so he made a deal with Bud, and he said, "This is the cheapest fishing I've ever done. It's cheaper than owning my own boat by a lot. And I catch fish every time, and I can get off the boat and go home and have dinner with Hazel and get up in the morning and go do it again if I want to." He says, "I'm a damned old man. It's the only fun I can get." And it's really true. Lee Shepherd was great. We had a great time with him. And Bud bought an old aircraft chair, put it right in the middle of the deck house floor so the old man could sit there in the chair and keep his eye on the wireline baits. He even had a seatbelt. He'd even put it on when it was real rough. He was. Let's see. When he finally died, he was 86 years old, and he fished 4 days a week without fail. He'd come down to the boat. It's blowing 35. He'd come down. "Well, buddy, what do you think?" And Bud said, "Well, Mr. Shepherd, it's blowing pretty hard." He says, "Well, we know the road home," and we'd go out, and that was it. But it was great. Geronimo rode along as our second mate, and he helped me rig and wind in fish, and we had a great time. It was unbelievable. And I would like to say this. You know, I was a young punk and I didn't know much about anything, but I was just smart enough to realize that I was right in the middle of the good old days. And it really, truly was. You know, when you work that hard and you fish that hard, it's just, you can't really put a value on it, you know. 250 days a year is a lot. And I look back at that and I think, man, I went to work in 11 years with Bud. I was late to work twice and missed one day. And I was so sick the day that I missed work, I got out of bed and fell flat on the floor and crawled to the bathroom to throw up. And I was late to work, and Bud couldn't believe it. I mean, I didn't get to work. He called me, and I couldn't even answer the phone. I was married at the time, and she answered. She says, he's snuggled up to the toilet. He's not coming to work. And Bud said, "I'll have to find somebody else." And anyway, he went out. I heard about it for days. Anyhow, you know, Bud was such a trip. He was, every day with Bud was an adventure. And he was an amazing human being. And Charlie talks about his being a mentor. It's absolutely true. You know, when you work that hard, he became bigger than life to me. And even when we had bad financial times, you know, I wasn't going anywhere else. I was staying right there. Because to me, Bud was my father figure. You know, my dad died when I was only 8. And I didn't have a father figure until I got Bud. And so, anyway, in all that time, I can rarely ever remember Buddy getting mad. he just didn't get mad. He didn't ever yell at me, never one, and no matter how I screwed up in the cockpit, he didn't yell at me. And believe me, his cockpit was a very active place. There's all kind of stuff going on all the time. We fished 2 wire lines, 4 outriggers, and a flat line most days. And the wire line might be out at 700, 800 feet. And you better be paying attention. You're fishing in water that's only maybe 60 feet deep. So it was pretty treacherous sometimes. But anyhow, I will tell you a little story about one of the times when Bud got mad. And it's pretty funny. I show up at the boat one morning, and it's about 6, and he says, I picked up a party. Okay. I said, where is he? He's over there in the car. So I'm watching. He says, let's get ready to go. So I get ready to go. And it's in springtime. I remember it was April or May, but anyway, I knew. I said, what are we going to do? He says, we're going to run offshore. The dolphin will probably be out there. He said, just put out 1 hand crank wire, 4 riggers, and we'll just go. So I said, okay. I get ready to go, and car door opens up, and this little spindly little guy comes walking out, and he's got a little brown bag. I'm watching him, and he comes down to the boat, and I help him get on the boat, and he sits down in Old Man Shepherd's chair. And he's sitting there in the chair, and I'm getting ready to go, run around, rigging stuff up, and we're heading out. And he looks up at me, and he says, hey, Sonny. And I say, yeah. He says, come here. I go over there, and he says, I went fishing once before, and I caught 100 fish. And if you can catch me 100 fish, I got something for you. I said, really? What's that? And he says, I'm going to give you $5. And I thought, oh boy. So I'm running around. Pretty soon, I said, you got anything you want to put in the refrigerator or ice down or anything like that, any drinks? And he says, no, I got my lunch right here. Pulls up his brown bag, pulls out a 5th of Bacardi and one of those little cups like you get from the dentist when you're rinsing out your mouth. And he fills it up with Bacardi and he drinks it down. He says, now there's some good groceries. He drinks that slug of rum, and we head out, and we go fishing. And, of course, we run right out to the weed line in the sky. I mean, it is wide as this room, currents boiling. Here they come hopping to us, and we start catching them. And, you know, Bud's boat had a little wheel right in the cockpit, right in the corner of the transom, and it had 3 controls. There was a 3-engine Norseman. It was built by Eugenio Padilla, but it was patterned right off a Norseman. And so we could bail dolphin like nobody's business. I mean, we could slaughter them. And Bud came down off the bridge, and he and I are fishing, and this old man's catching one, and we catch 3 or 4 apiece, and he catches another one, we catch 3 or 4 apiece, and we're helping him, we're moving him all around and everything, and he's pretty drunk. Anyhow, back in those days, we used to use those big 144 igloo fish boxes, you know, ice boxes, and we'd fill those up, and I get to the place where I got to empty the bait box out, put fish in there, and Bud says, this old guy, every time he catches one, he throws it in the boat, and he says, that's some more good groceries. So Bud finally says, I've had enough, let's go in. So we head in. We only had a half-a-day charter, and we headed back in. So we set up, and we start cutting fish, and we had a 2-man fish cutting table, so I'm whacking them on one side, Bud's whacking them on the other side, and we cut a box of fish, and I'm rolling them up for this guy and bundling them up and stacking them up on the dock. And he says, I'll be right back. He goes and gets his Cadillac and comes and backs it into the dock right in front of the boat. And he says, man, you guys are really doing good. You're getting me some good fish here. He gave me my $5. So I'm bundling up fish and packing it up. And we've got probably a whole box on the boat that this guy doesn't know about, but we got about half a box still on the dock. And there's a guy who's standing on the dock with his kid. And he looks at me and he says, did you catch all these fish today? I said, yes, or just this morning. He says, really? I said, yeah. He says, do you think you could go out and catch more today? I said, yeah. He says, I want to go. I got some mad money. I want to spend it. I said, okay. So I told Bud, we got a trip. We're going back out. He says, good. We'll get rid of this guy. So Bud goes down the boat and he calls Geronimo. Geronimo, come out. Geronimo comes up on the dock. He says, grab that box. The guy's sitting there in his car. He's got the trunk of his car is open. I got all these bundles of fish, and I grab the guy, and we go over there. We put the fish in his trunk. And Bud says, Geronimo, get that box. So they get the box. They set it up on the bulkhead behind the boat, behind the guy's car. And they pick it up and they walk it right over there, and Bud says, okay, here's the rest of your fish, pal. And he dumped the whole box right in the guy's trunk. The whole box of fish, brine, everything. Water's running down out of the guy's trunk. Bud runs up on the dock and fires up the boat. And I'm throwing off the lines. And we go, and this guy's standing on the dock. He's, he didn't know what to say. He was completely bamboozled by all this, and we took off. We went out, and I'm laying down the outriggers. We go back under the bridge, and we go back out. Now, the good news is that's not the end of the story. We go out under the bridge, and we run back out, right back out to the weed line in the sky, and it's beautiful. And, of course, the currents pushed it all farther north a ways, but we slide in there, and here they come again. So I've barely got enough ice now to deal with all these fish, but they're coming, and we're catching them. And this kid is in heaven. He's cackling and laughing, and his father, and they're having the best time of their life. I mean, they're from Kansas or somewhere. They didn't even have any idea fish like this existed. And so those of you who are fishermen who've been out at sea and you know what it's like to be in a school of dolphin and having the greatest time, and dolphin are jumping, and we're handing rods back and forth, and everything's tangled up, and everything's getting straightened out and whatever. And right into this school of fish comes about a 400-pound blue. And you know how it is when you see a blue marlin on the hook jumping, or he's on the line, he's pulling drag and whatever, and he's doing what he's doing. But when you see one 10 feet away from you, and he's unencumbered, and he's sailing in there with his pecs out and lit up and gorgeous, it's unbelievable. Well, Bud never flinches. He swings one in the boat on his little dolphin rod, unhooks him, reaches over, grabs his long rigger hook, which has been wound into the boat, and flips it out, starts ripping line off, says, Bobby, hold her straight. And he runs up on the bridge, and I put the boat in gear, and he goes in, drops that dolphin to that blue marlin's bungie, and comes tight on him, and then he's jumping. And of course, this guy, he didn't have any idea anything like a blue marlin. This guy from Kansas, and this fish is going crazy. And of course we caught the fish, and they had the time of their life, and we're heading back in. Now Bud used to have a few expressions that he used to use a lot, and one of his favorite expressions was chicken one day and feathers the next. And that story was just one of those stories where we had both the chicken and the feathers, but we had feathers in the morning, and in the afternoon we had the chicken, and that guy mounted that fish, and we sold boxes full of dolphin, and we had a fabulous day. So it was just one of those adventurous days in my life, just so you'll know what it was like with him. 11 years I was with him, and I would have stayed. I would have stayed to this day if he'd have lived long enough. I only left because my fourth daughter was born with patent ductus baby and had to have open heart surgery at 4 pounds. So it was time for me to go on, move on to something else, and I went back to fishing with Billy. And we traveled all over the world, and we did all kinds of stuff together. And fishing for me was truly a great career, and it's a tribute to the people in this room. But just to know the honor it is for me, fish with Buddy Carey and fish with Billy Harrison, and chase Jackie Morrow's records all over St. Thomas. And now I work for the Whitakers. What a wonderful thing for me. It's just been a terrific life for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Is Rufus still here? Rufus still here?
Rufus, are you still here? No?
I think he had to go to another meeting up north.
I'd like to maybe say one thing. Thank him for his efforts in Tallahassee.
Yep, Rufus has been on our behalf up there. To accept the Tommy Gifford Award on behalf of Buddy Carey, please welcome Billy Harrison back to the stage. Pictures first, then a couple quick stories.
Pictures first, okay. I gotta take that off. Yep.
You don't need any more tonight. Everybody knows who you are now.
No, she said get rid of her. She's tough.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, Bill.
There you go. All set for you.
You got it. Well, you heard a lot about how Bud was, and he was a fair person and all, but I'm just going to tell you a couple more stories to laugh. Only someone like Bobby will really understand, or anybody who worked the cockpit, where you had 2 wire lines down the middle,
and 4 outriggers, sometimes 5. What separated Buddy from so many people is we fished 2 electrics down the middle of their wire line, and we fished 2 3.5 drone spoons. And Bud caught volume because he knew how to fish. He was a natural fisherman. And when the bonitas were biting on the edge, we'd hook a double header naturally on the spoons, and we'd come up, and I think Jackie was talking about how long the leaders were. Well, Buddy used 50 feet a leader, so I was there before Bobby. And you had to be good to pull it. And one of the things that made Bud so good is when you're wiring your second bonita up and it's almost to the boat, Bud had the boat in gear and hooked up going trolling speed. And what happened was the 4 riggers went down with bonitas. So now instead of 2, you had 4 more to pull. And he had a big live bait well in the middle of the boat. This is the Alligood boat before the Padilla that Bobby was on. And we used to throw the first 20 or 30 bonitas in the deck well because the water a lot of times made them bad for strips. But what happened is the blood would pour out of the live bait well from all these bonitas which were hooked in the gills. And with Bud one time, when I was, of course, young and in good shape, he told me a story that happened about this hammerhead that followed up. And so a couple of days later, we always had hammerheads that followed up and wanted to bite the bonitas. So I'm wiring it up, and here's the hammerhead right behind it, and I look up at Bud. He sort of nodded, and I said, I'll give it a try. And so as the hammerhead kept trying to bite the bonita, I shortened it, and I leaned over and got right to where I lifted the bonita out of the water and grabbed one side of the hammerhead's head and grabbed the other side. Now, it wasn't a big one. It's like 7 feet. And Bud already had the boat hooked up. So as the hammerhead wanted to flip, he couldn't because he had to swim because the boat's now doing 7 or 8 knots. And here I am hanging over, holding onto this hammerhead, laughing, and Bud has all the party go over and look at it. Now, you're real safe because you got the horns on them, and anybody who's ever handled a hammerhead know if you let go with both hands, you're free. But that was one of the stories we did on a regular basis to entertain the people. But Bud would do things like fishing a gag haul, which you heard about Red Stewart. And I always remember when the gags were hot. They spawned in January, February, March. And I remember pulling 2 on the electric lines, and all of a sudden one of the long riggers went down. And as I pulled the last gag, and these are 10, 12, 15 pounders, all of a sudden the other long rigger goes down and a short rigger goes down. And when in your lifetime did you ever hear of catching 5 gag groupers at the same time trolling? But this is something Bud had done all his life, and he knew how to do it. He knew what he was going to do. And again, Bobby's just nodding because Bobby went 11 years doing what I did only in a few years, because I only went with Bud a lot of times when, when he needed me because I was running this other boat. But one of the funny things that Bobby did say, I forgot, and he said it, is that Bud was finishing up with a mate we called Johnny. He's actually a machine gun. He was going to go to Texas. And Buddy had a couple people he was asking about, and I think we're on the Alligood boat, the 47-footer. And he's talking about there, and I'm down pulling fish in, because that's all you did. You pulled fish in all day. And I look over, and I just had to clarify this because I saw I was correct. I look over, and here's the WOG, W-O-G. Was it an egg harbor? Okay, a wooden egg harbor. And here's Bobby over there, like you said, 19, and his couple brothers and a couple young girls, and they always forgot to wear their bathing suit tops, so Bud and I like that. But I told him, I said, Bud, take a look at that guy over there. I said, that's the guy you should think about. And that was when Buddy first saw Bobby. And then he came down to the dock, and Buddy told me, oh, you got to take him out and see if he can, I don't know, rig a ballyhoo or whatever. And of course, Bobby went with me, so we didn't use many ballyhoo because we caught warsaws. But it was just one of these great things with him. And Red Hagen told me this story with Buddy one time on the way out Government Cut. 2 guys wanted to mount white marlin. Well, you do off Miami, you don't go out and catch 2 white marlin. But he told Bud, and Bud goes out and goes north of the sea buoy, and Bud never does this. So Red thought, oh my God, Buddy's been drinking. But Buddy doesn't drink. About an hour later, they have 2 white marlin laying on the deck. And he's on the edge with the 2 drones out and catching kingfish and bonitas right and left. And I don't know how Bud knew how to do this. He went up and what he called sawed the current. He'd saw back and forth in the Gulf Stream. And it was gone. And I remember one day fishing with him. We're out in Tilefish Lane, and we're catching tilefish on the electrics. and he says, throw one of the bonitas out of the well out there. And of course, all the bonitas in there only had one eye and everything because we dropped them so many times. I don't remember the short rigger or whatever it was. It goes out there, and the bonita goes, the blue runner goes down, and we got, 4 or 5 tilefish coming up in the electrics, and I wind down, and up jumps a white marlin, and I go, Bud, right along there. It popped out a ballyhoo, and Bud winds down. Of course, he never misses, and up jumps a white marlin. Double hitter, a white marlin, and 6 tilefish on at one time. You can't do it. I go back, hey, Red, remember the 2 white marlin? I said, yeah, we caught them with Bud. Double hitter? Yeah. He said, yeah, that's what we did. But this is Miami. This isn't Ocean City. But I don't want to bore you, but Bobby went on and fished with the Padilla boat, and it was, what, 54? 54 feet with 3.7 Cummins. And I did run the very, very first because I don't remember. Bobby wasn't hired, but we're going out government cut, and the boat's getting too far to the left jetty, and finally Buddy says, you got to turn the boat. And I turned we had a wheel in the cockpit with the clutches and throttles. The first day we had no steering all day long, so I had to casually walk over and look at Bud and turn it, but no one knew it. And we come in, and Bud spins the boat around, and in we go, and unloaded 30 bonitas, 50 kings, 100 dolphin, 4 sails or something, a regular day with Buddy Carey. But he would say, how did you do it? But I don't want to go on and on and on, because we can tell stories forever and ever about Buddy, because he caught anything and everything, and he was a great man, and he sure taught a lot of us, a lot about fishing. Okay. And Skip, we always want to thank you. Thank you.
No, thank you,
for putting this together, and especially I've said for Bud for
Buddy Carey.
years and years. And Skip and Barkey and everybody, thank you for Buddy.
Well, we got to enjoy a lot of great fish stories tonight, and on behalf of the legendary Captain and Crew Committee and the IGFA, and we thank you for joining us this evening. Please continue to help support the IGFA, even though we do the record book and we do so many things. We do a lot of conservation, and we'd love you to join us and come by the IGFA. We still have the library there. It's amazing. The artifacts down below, the museum pieces are gone, but the museum, the library, the gem of IGFA is still there. So come up and join us up there at the IGFA. We'd love to have you come up and see the real stuff that we've kept here in Dania. So this is a really special night for the recipients of the Tommy Gifford Award. We saw some great people, some real passion for this sport. And we applaud all of tonight's inductees and the past recipients. And thank you. Good night. Drive careful. The bar's going to stay open, so you can stay here and have a drink, and we can tell a few more stories for another hour. So stay with us, and good night. Drive careful.